Hello and welcome to Town Meeting TV's coverage of General Elections 2026. My name is Debbie Ingram. This program is part of a series of candidate forums hosted by Town Meeting TV in advance of the general election on Tuesday, November 3rd, 2026. These forums are made possible by Town Meeting TV's generous underwriting partners. You can find all our forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel, where auto-generated captions are available. If you're tuning in on YouTube, be sure to click the subscribe button to stay tuned into local democracy the entire election season. On today's program, we will hear from 4 candidates who have several things in common. All 4 of them are from South Burlington. Each of them represents a 1-seat district. They're all incumbents, and they are all unchallenged for the general election in November. And they're also all Democrats. So starting to my immediate right is Emily Krasnow from Chittenden-9, Kate Nugent from Chittenden-10, Brian Minier from Chittenden-11, and Martin J. Lalonde from Chittenden-12. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Now, we have prepared a list of questions for each of you, and you will have 90 seconds to answer each question. And if you're tuning in live, we will also welcome your questions at 802-862-3966. If you call in, we will do our best to prioritize your question, though we will screen calls to ensure questions are not repeated. We ask that you share your name and the town you live in, and that your question be directed at all candidates, not just one in particular. So we're going to get started first with 1-minute opening statements. And the opening statement is designed for you to tell us why you are running and what benefit it will be to your constituents if you are reelected. So we'll start with Emily.
Thank you, Debbie. Well, my name is Emily Krasnow, and I serve South Burlington's Chittenden-9. I'm running for my 3rd term, and I have lived in South Burlington for the last 21 years. I grew up in Charlotte, and I learned the importance of connecting with community and people, starting door knocking when I was just 7 with my dad, who was a state representative as well. Here in South Burlington, I am a big volunteer in our community. I love the people that we serve and connect with, and so it goes so quick. I currently serve as ranking member of the General and Housing Committee and the co-chair of the Working Vermonters Caucus, and I'm committed to doing work on behalf of working Vermonters and working on issues that affect everyone in our community and bringing more voices into the process. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to Kate.
Thank you. Kate Nugent. I'm running for my 3rd term as well. I grew up in Massachusetts on Cape Cod, and I always say that was a really rough life, probably you can imagine. I've always been involved in my community from a very young age, also helping, all sorts of ways. And I think kids and youth are a big motivator for me. I have taught in some capacity since I started playing the flute, and I taught young kids flute when I was in high school. So I've been on the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee for the last 2 terms, and part of my job that I've had and I continue to have is as a nonprofit director. And I think that gives me a sampling of all sorts of ways that one entity needs to work. And so government operations addresses a lot of the ways that government works. And so, whether it's HR, hiring, marketing, touches on a lot of things. So that's kind of something that really motivates me and I think I contribute to.
Great, thank you. So we do have a caller, and I'm just going to get us through the opening statements of all the candidates, and then we will come to you, caller. So please hang on. Brian, I'll let you go next on your opening statement.
Thanks. Brian Minier from Chittenden-11, which is the part of South Burlington over by Shelburne Road. Shaw is that area. Also running for a 3rd term. In my first biennium, I was on House Education. My 2nd term, I still am serving on House Corrections and Institutions, and I will serve wherever I'm told to serve, but I'd be pleased to have the chance to run it back on corrections and institutions. It feels like there's a lot happening and a whole lot of unfinished work there. Delighted to serve with these wonderful colleagues, and that can serve for now.
Okay, great. Thank
Pleased
you.
to have the chance.
Great, thanks very much. Okay, Martin, we'll finish with you.
Yes, Martin Lalonde, Chittenden-9, and I've been serving for the last 12 years, so this is my going for my 7th term. I've served on the House Judiciary Committee for all 12 years. The last 4 years I've been the chair of the House Judiciary Committee. I think the continuity that I'm going to be bringing to the work that we're doing in the Judiciary Committee is very important, and that's one of the reasons I'm continuing to run and continuing to step up to serve South Burlington and the state of Vermont.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, caller, if I can push the right button, we're happy to, to have you. Hello, you're on the air. Hello, caller, can you hear me? And maybe somebody can help me. Somebody off stage might be able to help
A
me
previous
here.
life. Yeah.
Right.
Don't remember.
Just keep going. Okay, I'm sorry. I think we've lost the caller. So if they come back, we'll pick them up again. So let's just go on then to our next question, which is about committee assignments. You've already mentioned these, but you get to talk more in depth about these. So much of the legislature's work happens in committee through hearings, taking testimony, and negotiation before a bill ever reaches the floor. So please tell us which committee you've been serving on, and if you think you'll continue on that, and why is that committee a good fit for you and your skills being put to good use. So this time we'll start with Kate.
So I've been on the Government Operations and Military Affairs Committee for the last 2 terms. I think it's been a good fit, as I was mentioning before, just because it matches well with my work experience and interests in policy. I think it's a good fit for me in the future, potentially. I'm also interested in law, so I've always been interested in judiciary, but there's 2 South Burlington, well, that would mean there would be 2 South Burlington people in there, so that's probably unlikely. And I guess I haven't really thought too much beyond those 2. I have a lot of experience in human services field. My job is in applied public health, and so I have knowledge in that area as well. And yeah, I'm happy to serve wherever I'm needed, and I think there's always something to be learned and contributed to. So
Great. All righty. Thank you. So Brian.
So talked about it a little bit in the introduction. I served on education for my first term. I thought that placement made a lot of sense. I actually had the pleasure of serving on the South Burlington School Board with Martin before I got to the legislature. And then in this past term, I was moved over to corrections and institutions. I wasn't sure how that fit would be, but it turned out to be very interesting work. And it's an interesting committee because it's split basically right down the middle between Republicans and Democrats. So there's really good debate that happens in the committee room. And I do think that makes for a stronger bill when it gets to the floor and perhaps has a better chance of passing. There's still plenty to do in terms of local policy. There's also the intersection with federal policy. And we serve at the pleasure of the speaker. Should the new speaker choose to put me back there, I'd be happy to serve there again.
Okay, thanks. And Martin.
Yeah, so this summer, as I've been working in my garden on my tomatoes and beans and zucchinis, I've thought maybe agriculture would be the right place for me. But actually, I did have one of the bills that I worked on this year was for homeowners associations to be able to make sure that they can have gardens, and having food is very important. Having said that, I think the right place for me is probably continuing in the Judiciary Committee for the continuity that I bring. I am a licensed lawyer, although I don't practice at this moment. So I bring those skill sets and knowledge of that area of law. So I think that hopefully I'll be able to be back there chairing that committee again.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Emily.
Well, I serve on the General and Housing Committee now, and I've always talked about how it really is my dream portfolio. We have housing, of course, and then we have labor, which is something that I'm very interested in, and then also social justice, and then anything else that kind of doesn't have a home in the body. So I would love to remain on that committee. I really enjoy the work that we do. I like that we have a lot of different things in our portfolio, so we move around a lot. Housing could really be its own committee, but I enjoy also working on labor policy, things like my first term, I worked very heavily on paid family medical leave, which we worked on for several months. And so I enjoy serving on that committee, and again, I hope that our new speaker will keep me on there. I think we've done a lot of really good work. We're losing 5 members at least this year, so I think having that consistent voice will be important, and yeah, I hope to stay on there.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. So let's move on to another question. The legislature serves to provide a budget to meet the needs of Vermonters through services, as well as enacting policies and procedures that meet constituent needs. Where have you seen examples of good legislation that makes you excited to be a legislator? So, Brian, we'll start with you.
I guess for a couple examples, in my first term, when I was serving on the Education Committee, we passed the sort of child care bill, I guess I'll call it, with the 0.44% payroll tax, increasing access to child care and increasing wages for those who work there. I thought that was great legislation, but in truth, it was likely only possible when we had the greater numbers that we had in my first term. Now that we don't have such strong numbers on the Democratic side, it becomes sort of the art of the possible, I guess I would call it. And in terms of what I've done in my committee, I think some of the finest work that we do is on the capital bill, you know, $200 million worth of state funding taking care of institutions and buildings and museums and monuments and all that. And that's really a nice area for us to come together as an 11-person committee with lots of different perspectives. So yeah, I think this 2 years is going to be working within constraints and figuring out what is possible within those constraints.
Okay, thank you. Martin?
Most of my work, almost all my work, really is done on the Judiciary Committee, and one of our focuses is public safety, access to justice. But on the public safety side, I think we've really done a lot over the last number of years, including this past session, related to domestic and sexual violence and helping survivors in that scenario. One of the bills we passed this year looks at the abuse of images, that when somebody has an image taken of them that they haven't consented to, and that is used to coerce the person to do things they don't want to do, for instance. But we've done a lot of other work in the area of helping with survivors. The other area is with respect to, for public safety reasons, some smart gun laws, some firearms restrictions, really focused on trying to get firearms out of the hands of individuals who might do harm with those. So a red flag law that we've passed safety laws, firearm storage laws, and this past session we passed a law that will help us implement the red flag law, and also for relief from abuse orders when there's supposed to be relinquishment of a firearm, making sure that works. It's an implementation on a bill that we passed a few years ago.
Great. Important things. Thank you. So, Emily.
Yeah, well, I remember my first forum here before I was elected, and we were talking about budget and appropriations, and I remember Martin saying, well, you try, it's very hard to get the money needed that, the budget is a statement of our values, and I think we do a really good job managing the budget in the constraints we have. I'm really proud of the work that we've done in our housing committee. Our committee makes recommendations to the appropriations committee for the budget on housing projects. So, we can build as much housing as we want, but if we don't have the investments and the services that go with affordable housing, then it's not going to be affordable. And so our committee spends a tremendous amount of time working on the investment portion on housing. So I'm really proud of the work we've done. I also worked really hard on the CHIP program last year, Community Housing Infrastructure, and was a strong advocate for that. But there's never enough funding to go around, and so a lot of the bills that I introduce don't have funding in them because I want to be realistic about the expectations that we set. So I will continue to do that.
Thank you. And Kate, we'll finish with you.
Thank you. Two things come to mind. As part of my work on the Government Operations Committee, I've been working with the Secretary of State's office and the Office of Professional Regulation. And the last 2 terms, we've put forth bills that make it easier for people to get into professions, really looking at education requirements and making sure that they are truly needed. And then also, when can we accept transferable education from other areas or other countries even? And that has felt really good, just given our staffing shortages in the state. And a lot of times I think we've all kind of recognized the error of requiring too much education when it's not necessary. It becomes a barrier. And I think the other thing that I'm really proud of is, and I guess I would say is a good approach to legislation in general, is sometimes you don't actually need a bill. And so through the process of working on an issue, you might discover that the best way to go forward is to work with an agency to streamline something. And so I worked with another legislator in my first term and then second term as well to work with the administration to improve the grant making process, which is a lot of nonprofits, a lot of municipalities had found that to be very onerous and just getting more and more harder to get through and taking away from their ability to do their work. So we did that through working with the administration rather than legislation. So I think those 2 things are equal in my head.
Great. All right. Thank you all very much. So let's move on to another question. It is true that roughly 1/3 of Vermont's budget depends on federal money. If Washington continues to pull back spending, how do you think Vermont should prepare for a leaner federal funding partner? What specifically do you think should be protected first when funding choices get hard? So let's start with Martin.
So, it's critical to do as much as we can for the vulnerable populations in Vermont. And so that's not I kind of deal with that in the Judiciary Committee. Actually, in the Judiciary Committee, we're kind of at the end of the line where everything else has failed as far as for individuals who may be unhoused or just don't have stability in their life, have mental health or addiction issues. A lot of these underlying factors can lead to criminality. And if we haven't dealt with those factors, it ends up at the doorstep of the courts. And it costs a lot to actually deal with that once it comes to the point where it's in criminal justice system. So I think it's really critical actually to keep on working upstream on those vulnerabilities. So this is really coming through my perspective, in the Judiciary Committee. I think there's other areas that we need to look at as far as for public education as well. Is really a high priority that I have, and ensuring that we're continuing to work on that really large issue of trying to make that more affordable, but also providing top quality education services as well. So I don't know if that completely answered that question, but
it's a big area to
it's
address.
a big area. Let's give another half hour. We can talk about that. So 90 seconds is tough on that one.
Go now.
It's true. Thank you. So Emily, how would you answer that?
Well, we are certainly living in terrifying times federally. I think that's one of the number one things that I hear about from constituents. And we do rely on a very large amount of our budget coming from the federal government. I think, as Martin mentioned, making sure our most vulnerable in our community are taken care of. So I believe in housing first approach, and so making sure that our committee discussed, the voucher program and making sure that we didn't lose too many of those vouchers for people. Food insecurity, I volunteer once a week at our South Burlington food shelf, and literally had, during when the SNAP benefits were cut, people would come in crying and terrified, and so helping folks understand that the government is here to help you. We are going to help you. We will get through this. And I'm really proud that Vermont stepped up and made sure that people had the services that they needed. Healthcare access is really important too. So those are I'm really concerned about healthcare, housing, and hunger are the top things that I'm worried about, and want to make sure that we save money in our budget for those needs if things continue to dissolve in DC.
Okay, thank you so much. Kate.
Yeah, definitely a big question. I think I would echo what has been said already, and also say that I think you have a floor for the economy, and then there's also a ceiling. That's sort of how I think about it. So protecting basic needs, and then so that things don't just fall out from under us. But also, I think we need to focus attention more than we have maybe on economic development. And I think that could mean looking at where tax dollars are going. Are they going out of state? Can we support services or purchase more services in Vermont and support our own economy, self-generating? I really think that the idea of a public bank or an infrastructure bank that North Dakota has is another way to generate economic activity. And I think that protecting our ability to grow in our municipalities is important. So using the tools that we have to make sure that we can generate our own income and revenue going forward, because I think, aside from what's happening right now, there's a lot of trends in our federal budget that have been mounting for a long time, and I think that we're going to probably have to deal with it one way or another anyway, so it's good to be proactive.
Okay, thank you. And so Brian, finish up for us.
I'm afraid there won't be too much novel here. I agree that education, healthcare, housing, and if you want to include food/hunger in healthcare, health in general, which I do, then that hits all of them. I think I would bring up one other problem, which is the federal funding is 1/3 of the state budget. That's a huge deal. But the other part of all this that I see in the institutions part of my Corrections Institutions Committee is the uncertainty surrounding, is this funding coming? And that was the question that we had for every expert witness, every person from the state government. Is this going to happen? Is the money coming in? Are the feds on it? And the answer was always some version of I don't know. That's going to be very difficult, perhaps less so after November. We'll see. I don't think you can, I know you can't make up that amount. You can't make up 1/3 of the state budget. And so what are we doing in the meantime? What you do, it's not sexy, but you bend the cost curve. And so we're looking at healthcare by doing reference-based pricing and trying to make sure that people aren't gouged for procedures. We're looking at how education is provided and looking at BOCES or CISAs in terms of sharing services. All of this will help over time, but it's not on the scale of the problem that we're talking about at the federal level. And I did see that Pete Hirschfeld had a piece in Vermont Public today about the governor proposing a budget that goes up just 2%, with 1% going to each of his, the different parts of state government. I think that's a fine goal. I do think within that there has to be strategic investment in certain areas, and I think the places that we've mentioned are the appropriate places to do that.
Okay, thank you all. So let's switch gears a little bit here, although we're still talking about money. Housing, healthcare, and human services are all big cost drivers on the Vermont budget. Some lawmakers have proposed new taxes on higher earners, second homes, and large asset transfers. The governor and others want to hold the line and find ways instead to decrease costs. So what new revenue streams would you like to see for Vermont, or what cost savings would you like to see enacted? And we'll start with Emily.
Yeah, well, thank you for this question. This is a tricky one. I do believe that we have an extreme inequity in our wealth, gap, and I think that we do need to look at what that means, as some call it a fair share, having our highest income earners pay more, and so that is something that I have supported for a long time, and but it's very nuanced. So, you know, what does that mean? So there were several proposals in the last session, some that I supported and some that I didn't. So I'm hoping that in the next session we'll go back to the table and look at those proposals. But some of them I felt were a little extreme and may have hurt some of the middle class or folks in that arena. You know, as far as our cutting spending, you hear that a lot from folks, you know, why can't you just cut more? And I do think, as Kate mentioned, there are areas that, you know, can be audited and some accountability for some of the spending, but I'm not, oh, my time's up. I was about to say something brilliant. No, I'm just kidding.
You can finish your thought.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Just for more later.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're trying to crack the whip here.
For more.
That's right. Okay, Kate.
I feel like I mostly touched on what I would say in my last answer, but maybe to clarify, I was thinking of all the services that Vermont might procure as a state, and which of those we get from out of the state that we could maybe buy in state that would support our own economy better, would be one way to increase or, you know, save money. Yeah, and I think we have to rein in healthcare costs a bit more. I feel that it's important to balance the services with the cost that we're asking from people. So I'm not sure if I would think that we want to look for new revenue sources just yet. So I guess the premise of the question I might question a little bit. You know, I have in the past proposed increasing the per drink tax on alcohol by like 6 cents as a way to raise revenue. And I know that I got an estimate that it would be about, it was like 17 million or something if we did that, like a 4-cent per drink tax. So obviously I think that is a good idea. So I guess I look at taxes, it's like you tax what you want to have less of, and you reduce taxes on what you don't, or you know, what you want more of. So I think if you tax growth and you tax people's income, it can reduce that. Whereas maybe we should focus on stuff we want them to do less of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Brian.
Yeah, I guess to start with, I would follow up on a point that Kate was making, and without putting any words in her mouth, I think I agree that I would question the premise, which is, you know, let's find a revenue stream, and hey, then let's find something to point it at. That's sort of the complaint about government often. And so in some cases, you can find efficiencies, you can do things better, you don't need a lot of extra money, and I think we saw, it's a little overly simplified, but we saw an example of that with the accountability court here in Burlington. There weren't a whole lot of extra resources, but with focus and with a good plan, we were able to surge the cases that were put through in a few months. In some places that will be possible, in other places where is it not possible. Martin brought up the funding that will be necessary for education. One thing that's bothered me since my time on the school board before the legislature is that for 20 years the state government has not put money in towards school construction, and we now have some of the most dilapidated facilities in the nation. That is a problem for which we need to find a revenue stream. I suppose this tax on second homes or on high earners could be one way of getting there. But I think first you look for the problem and then you say, okay, do we need to raise more revenue to do it? I think that education piece is one place where we might want to do that.
Okay. And Martin, you want to finish up for us?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to particularly the tax on second homes, but it's got to be done right. And there are nuances in all this tax policy, and that's nuances way beyond me, and thank goodness we have smart people on our Ways and Means committee to figure that out. But I think there's areas, and there's some areas that were kind of left on the table this past session that would have helped reduce costs. For instance, cost of healthcare for teachers, and which leads to what the budgets are, which leads to the property tax. And the governor vetoed S-190, and that would have started reference-based pricing earlier for, among others, for teacher health care. And I think that would have helped in affordability. So there are areas that we could, and in fact, that we advanced in the House that were vetoed that could have helped with that. I will point to another area which is more of long-term and may not be so much taxes or costs of the government, but frankly, you know, the so-called Affordable Heat Act that we had, and I think we're seeing a bite right now as far as the cost of oil and gas and fossil fuels, and that's an area where we need to try to move people to reusable energy, which I know that particular statute or that particular bill caused a lot of problems for the Democrats last time, but I think it's something we need to look at.
Okay, well, we're going to go away from money now and talk about some other issues. So our next question is, Vermont's part-time citizen legislature passed close to 250 bills the last biennium, covering everything from education reform and housing to data privacy, animal welfare, agricultural security, neurological rights, gender equity in corrections, immigration accountability, and environmental protection. You folks were busy. If elected, you will serve at the start of a new biennium. What are 2 bills that you want to see discussed and passed in the next 2 years? So we'll start with Kate.
I thought about this question earlier, and I don't have a couple of bills in mind, really. I have some thoughts about what we could work on, and I think privacy comes to mind. I think we could do a lot more with that, and a lot more of generating discussion around that. What do our rights look like in an era where these companies can track everything we're doing and potentially sell it to our government to use it to do whatever. So I think that that's really important. Yeah, I would love to see us reduce costs for average Vermonters and on stuff that they need all the time. Yeah, I think you have some limited options as a government as to what you can do as far as reducing costs, but maybe take the sales tax off of some things that people need but that are really expensive. So those are a couple ideas that I have.
Okay, great, thank you. So Brian.
I suppose this probably qualifies as ducking the question, but I think I'm more interested in process and how we do what we do. And so one of the problems that we saw this past biennium, and it still goes on, is I thought there had been a grand bargain struck between environmentalists and developers, and that people were coming together on the notion of reform to 181. During the process, it became clear that a great number of people felt excluded, and the place that we ended up satisfying almost no one. So somehow bringing stakeholders meaningfully to the table earlier so that we can have reform in building and permitting. I think that has to happen, and that's also something that can happen relatively inexpensively. I guess another one is, and I don't know if Martin will choose to speak more about this, but he certainly could if he wanted to, because it was mostly between our committees, Judiciary and Corrections. This facility that we're trying to create to replace the psych hospital that is no more. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but it'll have to strike the balance, first of all, on not too much money, with protecting the public, but also respecting the rights of those who are accused of these crimes. So I guess those are 2 areas.
Okay, thank you.
Well, he
Martin.
took what I was going to say. No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't do it well. You can improve on it.
No, so I mean, I'll duck the question somewhat as well. And so, I mean, having been there for 12 years, are things I've been working on for most of those years and still haven't gotten them over the finish line. And there aren't necessarily particular bills, but they're issues we're dealing with. One of them is definitely the intersection of mental health and addiction in the criminal justice system. The forensic facility is one piece of trying to address that. What we did in the accountability docket, although I somewhat disagree with Brian as far as it not requiring more resources, I think it was a surge of resources for 3 months, and we need to have continuity of those resources to address individuals' needs as they're getting into the criminal justice system to try to divert them into services as opposed to into the criminal justice system. So that's an area that I definitely want to continue to work on. And another area would be in juvenile justice and youthful offenders. And we have unfinished business in that area, and something we've been improving over the last several years as well, and need to continue to work on, making sure that we're recognizing that youth have impulse control. There's brain development that doesn't happen till the mid-20s, but we need to address that in a manner that is also respectful of the needs of for public safety. So,
Thank you. So Emily.
Well, I really like this question because in addition to the work that I do in committee, I love passing legislation. I love tracking bills. I love going to other committees and kind of networking to talk about the bills we worked on, and I'm really proud of a lot of the legislation that I've introduced over the last several years has become law. And so whether it's things that have to do with housing, as Brian mentioned, I remember last year saying, I'm not leaving here until we work on permit reform. Well, we didn't. And, landlord-tenant bills that our committees worked on hit some snags this year, so I'd like to take another look at that. I said that I would give Martin a huge thank you publicly again on the animal welfare work that we did together, which is now law. Very excited about that, and unfortunately there's more to do on that, so just so you know. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm excited.
Be a different committee
Yeah,
next time,
but
I
a
think,
different
so.
committee next time. So anyway, so more work always for the animals, but on housing, this summer and fall I've been working with the administration and my chair on a number of housing initiatives that we have more work to do on. Our committee doesn't do land use work, but there's a lot of places where we can pick up that on housing that I think are very much needed. But I think the legislature in a whole, if we don't really crack down on some healthcare reform and affordability concerns, is going to be a real challenge. So I'm going to be looking to our legislature to really pick that up next year.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's do something a little bit different. It's kind of fun. We're going to go to our lightning round.
I feel sparks in the air.
Yes, oh, very good, very good. It's very exciting. Okay, so I have 6 questions to ask you, and we really would like you to stay as close to a yes or no answer as possible. All right, at any rate, don't speak for more than 10 seconds to answer these, all right? And we'll just go, we won't rotate. We'll go start with Emily and end with Martin on all of them. Okay. All right. So the first one. Well, this legislation was passed last year, and I think it's already gone into effect. But do you support cell phone-free schools?
Yes, I do.
Yes.
Brent.
Yes, absolutely, in high time.
Absolutely.
All righty. Do you support an additional tax on second homes in Vermont? We touched on this already. Emily.
I do, but I want to make sure that we already are doing some of that, but I want to make sure that we're doing it right.
Okay.
But yes.
Kate.
I'm going to say maybe, and it depends on how it looks. Sorry.
Brian.
Identify them correctly, spend it on something good, yes.
And Martin.
Probably, and just like Kate, it depends on what it looks like.
All right. Do you support building a facility in Vermont to house people found incompetent to stand trial for criminal charges? Emily.
Yes, I do.
Kate.
I would say yes. I know not a lot about that issue, though, so I would defer to later information.
Brian.
Absolutely overdue, need to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big push this past session, and thank you all for supporting that.
Of course.
Great. Okay. Should Vermont legislate that companies be required to obtain clients' permission before selling your personal data? Emily.
Yeah, so this year, this is not a yes or no. This year, we made some strides on data privacy that, we worked with different stakeholders to come to a compromise, and I think the answer is yes, there's more work to do on that, and so I'd like to see it go further.
Kate.
I'm just going to say exactly what Emily just said.
And Brian?
Yes to the client's permission.
Yes.
Okay. Do you think Vermont would benefit from ranked choice voting in statewide elections? Emily?
So I have long been a supporter of ranked choice voting for many years, and I would like us to examine what that would look like if the committees have the capacity to do that. I don't think it is the biggest priority in the legislature, but yes, I would support a ranked choice voting system.
Okay, Kate.
I would support a trial of it with maybe 1 or 2 selected races, and also, I don't think it's the biggest priority, but I do think it's worth trying out.
Brian?
Sort of like the others. Need to know more, haven't studied it a lot. Seems like a decent idea to me to encourage being a moderate.
Okay, and Martin?
So, I mean, I'm looking at a question of, do I think that Vermont would benefit? I don't know. So I'm not sure whether I'd support it or not, but I don't know if it would benefit.
Okay. And lastly, should Vermont give municipalities home rule authority by default? Emily?
No.
Okay. Kate?
I don't think we can. I don't think that's really possible, so I would say no.
Okay. Brian?
Also a no.
Yeah, no.
Okay. All those select board people out there are going, okay. South Burlington is not the.
There's so much more
sure
to
they
that
support
question I would love to get into.
Yeah, it's tough.
No, it's all right. I'm sorry. I'm just giving you a hard time because I'm from Williston. So that's
Oh,
all right.
I know.
Okay.
I like those lightning rounds.
Yeah, that was fun. Okay, well, we're gonna focus on some important specific issues. So, education spending. Vermont student enrollment has been declining while per pupil spending continues to rise. Legislators need to work together to find ways to meet this challenge. What does an actually sustainable education funding model look like to you? And we'll start with Brian.
Here again, as I did on a previous question, I have to query the premise because we're not comparing apples and oranges. We're measuring things that other states don't put in their education fund. And so we're covering universal meals. We're offering in some places medical and dental services. In some places we're clothing children. So I think we have, and mental health, heaven knows. So we've put a lot of things in the education fund that increase that figure. That said, we're still spending a ton. We are losing our population. We are a rural state, and so changes need to be made. I think in the short term, I've already talked about it a little bit with these cooperative services. You know, there are ways of bending the cost curve. Long term, I do think you probably have to go to more of a regional model, consolidate at the high school level, and that also allows you to offer tech education in a better way.
Okay. Martin.
I couldn't have said it better, except I'm just add one part, and that is getting a handle on the healthcare costs as well. Yep. And also needing to look at the fact that if we go to a regional model, how are we going to address teacher salary and staff salary? There's some places that are paying a lot more, and does everybody get raised up to that level, which will be a lot more costly as well. But I think, yeah, looking at healthcare as well, the CSAs, the regionalization, I think are all things that we need to do.
Emily.
Well, I think everyone has spoken very eloquently, and I feel very similar. I think this has been, in the last couple of years, clearly one of the most talked about and difficult issues that, you know, we've worked on in the legislature. And more work will be done, no doubt. I have a lot of questions, you know, left about what we've passed and where we move forward. And I think the conversation needs to also be, while we have the spending issue, which goes to taxation, we also have to make sure that we're thinking about the best quality education for our kids. And I'm a product of our public schools here in Vermont and received a wonderful education and want to make sure that our teachers and students are supported. But you know, I remember saying to leadership, you know, I don't want to knock on doors again without this being figured out. And clearly, there's a lot more work to be done. It is not a one session fix, and we will no doubt continue working in collaboration with the administration and Ways and Means and the Education Committee to figure out this issue, because it's not working right now. The status quo is extremely broken.
Okay, thank you. Well said. And Kate.
Almost got away without answering that one, right? I guess I would just add on to what everyone else has said, because I would agree with that too. That I think one thing that would be helpful is more evaluation. What are we evaluating and how, I think really matters. And the more granular you can get, the better, to find out, what's working where. I know our outcomes are not great, and that's true nationwide, and I guess that's kind of been tied a lot to the introduction of tech in schools since 2012. I think scores nationwide have gone down, but it's always helpful to find out what's going on in Vermont, what's going on by the school district level. There's kids in South Burlington who might be in the same socioeconomic condition that others in other cities, that the whole city is considered that. And sometimes we've looked at taking resources from South Burlington and putting it into cities that don't have as much, but are we just spreading around the suffering instead of actually looking at where is that benefit needed, or where is the more attention needed? So I would like to see more data always. I think that's helpful.
Okay, let's turn now to healthcare costs. Healthcare costs in Vermont are some of the highest in the country. Medicaid changes threaten to undermine our current care providers. How do we balance lowering costs with keeping hospitals open, especially as insurance prices climb and coverage is limited? And we'll start with Martin.
So if I had the answer to that,
Wouldn't be hanging out with us.
I wouldn't be here. I mean, so I do think that we have a very good healthcare committee. And the committee process that they've had, they bring in the big brains to try to figure out this really difficult issue. And it is really difficult because demographics is completely against us. Healthcare costs go up as the population ages, and we have the second oldest state, I think it is. So it's not going to get better anytime soon. We're having fewer of the healthy population to pay the bills are in Vermont. So yeah, it's a huge issue, and I just don't have any kind of good answer. I know that the healthcare committee has done some good work. The reference-based pricing seems like a good idea for lowering costs, but are we going to be losing doctors because we're not paying them as much? I mean, there is that balance, which is going to be very, very difficult. But I will mention again that that a bill that was passed by the legislature was vetoed that would have kept on moving a little faster on trying to rein in those healthcare costs. So, but it's a very important issue. It's very important in my district as well. I'm surrounded by doctors, it seems, that from the UVM Health. But I trust that they are working very hard to try to figure that out.
Okay. So Emily, what do you say?
Well, I've been waiting for this question, and I need another 20 minutes.
Just yes or no.
Yeah. So, like so many Vermonters, I'm pissed. Basically, I can say is the healthcare system, not just the affordability, but access to care is a huge problem in Vermont. And one of the reasons I ran for office was to really not figure it out, because I don't have the answers either, but just to raise my voice and my constituents' voice that this is unacceptable. As far as access, folks are waiting. I myself waited 12 months to see a specialist that I needed to see for a healthcare concern. Right now, I was quoted for an urgent appointment for 3 months, which, it's unacceptable. People can die in that time. And so having to drive hours to get the care that you need is really unacceptable. People languishing in our ER because we don't have the mental health services we need is really also jamming up the system, what I've noticed from my time in the healthcare system. So I really think the legislature needs to make this a #1 priority. As I've been knocking on doors this summer and fall, it's the #1 thing that I'm hearing about, whether it's from seniors who have the wait times, or young people who are frustrated with the costs, and our most vulnerable people, like losing their subsidies and Medicaid. I mean, it is so just unfathomable that this is happening, and healthcare is our most basic right, and I just really hope that this is prioritized by leadership next session.
Thank you. Kate.
Would you mind repeating the question?
How do we balance lowering costs with keeping hospitals open, especially as insurance prices climb and coverage is limited?
Thank you. Well, again, big question. One promising idea that I have heard is looking at our state as a region and trying to figure out if there's places where certain services are needed or used more often, then making sure that that service is more readily available in that region. And so I guess it's kind of like a lot of our sectors right now, does it make sense to consolidate or regionalize where necessary? And yeah, it's a really tough question. I think a lot of the work that Office of Professional Regulation and the Healthcare Committee has done is making it, it's like cooperations with other states so that people with licensure can come here more easily, work and go between states. So that's one thing. And I will say for South Burlington, and just a plug for our awesome city, I was walking around Market Street the other day, actually taking a run in the morning, and I saw this guy in scrubs, scooting away on a scooter towards Burlington, and I was just thinking, like, that's pretty great that we've done such a great job building a lot of new housing, and just for that purpose to bring in doctors and young residents. So that's a little bit of hope that I have that we're on the right track in some way.
Okay, thank you. Brian.
Yeah, I don't know that I can extricate myself from the premise. I mean, everybody was all excited, and me too, about reference-based pricing as a way of saving money within healthcare, and it works. And then you get to this year, and it's like, well, yes, but the hospitals need to make money for them to function. And so I believe that the new leadership at UVM, Dr. Stephen Leffler, Mike Smith is in there, have done a good job of looking at what's being provided and how, have cut the fat that they can out of administration. And at a certain point, you are talking about regionalization, as Kate talked about. There was an interesting article, I think it was in Digger again, it was a letter to the editor, like an op-ed kind of piece from a fellow who works as the treasurer for Grace Cottage. And he was talking about the Brattleboro Birthing Center and the fact that if you actually want to support them, if you want to keep the service open, you may have to reimburse at 2 to 3 times the Medicaid rate. And I think UVM chooses to subsidize the nursing program, I know they do, to produce more nurses. There was another article recently about physician education. You need to do these things, and so just like with the governor's proposed austerity budget, you have to choose places to focus. And I think if we are to do that, if we're going to save money, I think we do have to pick certain places to focus on. And so is that sort of like more basic lower level primary care? I think it is. Because there is a trade-off. There is going to be some loss in access to save money. I don't see a way around that.
Okay, thank you. So another big thorny issue is housing. Vermont has made efforts to fund housing, loosen Act 250, and push towns towards more density in an effort to offset rising housing costs with more market opportunities. What would you like to see done in the next legislative session to make it tenable for people to buy or rent in Vermont? Emily, we'll start with you.
Well, thanks for this question, of course. I don't think that the legislature has done enough and fast enough regarding housing. I think we need to continue with our regulatory reform and also make more investments. Where we get that money is obviously another question, but we absolutely have to do more and continue focusing on that. The costs of housing, that's one of the things our committee deals with, is how much it costs to build a house now is extraordinary. And so developers trying to make those numbers work, they just aren't. And so while we need more housing, and South Burlington is I'm always so proud on our committee to say, come to South Burlington and see all of the amazing housing. Thousands of new units have gone up. I've lived there for 21 years, and I've just been so excited about the growth. But while we're an example, there's still, places to make it affordable. I think the affordable part is a really important piece. Like, we could completely eliminate Act 250 tomorrow, and that doesn't mean that people will be able to afford the houses. So I think we need more supply, more investments, and continue those conversations. I'm also very data-driven, so I've been working this summer and fall on the data, and my first term introduced a bill around housing data, and so just continuing to look at that and see where we're doing well and where we could do better.
Okay, thank you. Kate?
Yeah, I think there a lot has been said already, so I don't want to repeat things. My understanding is the cost of construction is one of the biggest issues right now, that's, as Emily mentioned, and I guess I would go back to thinking about infrastructure bank or public banking. How can we get more self-generating economic activity going to make that easier? And also, from my government operations perspective, I think that maybe the process that Act 250 goes through could be a little bit, we could strengthen that a little bit so it's either not duplicative with towns that are already doing it, which I think we've already been working on somewhat, and just make sure that people aren't waiting, 6 months for somebody to come out and look and see, do you have, artifacts on your land or not, at which point either their permit might have expired or the construction loan goes away. So how can we streamline what we are doing and protect people's, health and safety, and also bring economic support to that? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Brian?
Like everything you've asked tonight, it's a big thorny question, and so I guess I'm going to pick just one part of it. And here again, it's because I read something in local media. Around a week ago in Digger, Carly Berlin had a piece talking about the average household size over the last 50 years, currently 2.2, I think it is, throughout Vermont, down from 3+ maybe 50 years ago and steadily decreasing. And so there's this mismatch between our ancient housing stock and where people actually want to live. Old folks can't downsize, new families can't start. And so maybe one way to help get through that, and I've seen this some in my institution's work on my committee, is when developers are doing a new project, they look at a funding stack, putting together funding and resources from several different areas. One way the government can help is by doing the infrastructure portion of that, or at least assisting with it. And so the successful projects that I've seen in my limited time there have included some state help with sewer or with water pumps in one case. And so is there a way for the state to help with this kind of development through private developers, but insist on building the type of housing that people are actually looking for, which in many, many, many cases is smaller than what we have available?
Okay, thank you. And Martin, we'll let you finish up.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things to the conversation on this as well, and along the lines of what Brian was talking about. As far as investments, I don't see us pumping millions of dollars into this, but I think the tax increment financing and the CHIP is the way to do that, to help with the infrastructure. And hopefully the new program called CHIP, and I can't remember what that stands for. Somebody else will have to tell me, but what was that?
Community Housing Infrastructure Program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I knew you would know that. Acronyms. So I think that's a great way to help as far as investments. I think the Housing Committee did a good job with respect to manufactured housing.
Yes,
I think that's really critical. And I think it's also critical that we get a rental registry and we get a good handle on how many houses we have in Vermont are not available for residents. And that means second homes, and I think that goes back to a higher tax on second homes as a disincentive perhaps for having a second home in Vermont. I know that there are good parts of having people here have a second home, but a lot of the housing stock is not available. You read about in Stowe, for instance, on how many homes are there for short-term rentals and not available for actual residents. So I think that needs to be looked at as well.
Okay. Well, thank you all so much for your very thoughtful answers, and thank you for your service in the legislature. It's time to wrap up. So thank you for tuning in to Town Meeting TV's ongoing coverage of local candidates, budgets, and ballot items. You can find this and many more forums at cctv.org/general or on our Town Meeting TV YouTube channel. Don't forget to cast your ballot on Election Day or before, and that's November 3rd. And then be sure to tune in to Town Meeting TV's election results recap show that evening at 7:30 p.m. to hear about live election results. And you can contact your local clerk to find out how to obtain a ballot and how to register to vote. In Vermont, you can actually register to vote on Election Day. And remember that you can vote early as well, up to 6 weeks before November 3rd. So keep an eye on all of that. And also thank you for watching and sharing Town Meeting TV.